The East African tradition of the Maasai tribe is to greet one another with the words Kasirian and Gera, which is Swahili for, so how are the children? In that community, the well-being of their children is the highest priority. If you are interested in participating in thought-provoking conversations about the well-being of children and families, please tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. to Fresh Start Today on 860 AM WNOV. Together, we can save our children.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. It's 3:05 p.m. in the afternoon. It is, in fact, a lovely day. I wish there was some sunlight out there, but I can work with it. We have in the studio today with us the blacksmith himself, Dr. Ramel Smith. Good afternoon.
Glad to be back.
Man, glad to see you. Then we have co-host over here, Mr. Sean Roby. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And then we have our special guest in the studio, and we're going to call him Mr. Ed. Mr. Ed, how are you doing, Mr. Ed?
I'm blessed.
You got to call him Brother Ed. I think of the horse, man.
No, okay. Brother Ed. So we really have a really great panel of guests this afternoon, and we're going to be talking about the relationship that black fathers have with child serving systems like child welfare and the family court system. And Ed's story is a very unique story that goes way back to 2004, I believe, is when things kind of started. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I just want to kind of lay the groundwork here today in terms of what we're going to seek to understand or to address in this forum. One is we want to help dispel myths about African-American fathers and their children. The next thing is the historical relationship between fathers and the child welfare system, including the unique challenges that black fathers face with dealing with these systems, the benefit of engaging fathers in child welfare services, and also effective strategies on engaging fathers. The last thing is the impact of systemic bias and racism on black fathers' health. And Dr. Ramel Smith, I think he's going to be very instrumental in helping us fully understand that impact. So we're looking to have a great time, and if you want to join this conversation, you can call 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. Now, what I don't want people to text me and tell me how great the show was. You know, if you can't call me and talk to me and say, you know what, I really value and appreciate this show, then, you know, we'll just keep it moving. But, you know, I want to say something that's really, really great. The other day, I was out of town, and while I was away, there were several phone calls that came in. One came over from a lady who was 82 years old. I can't remember what her first name was, but I ended up calling her to see what the issue was, and she had said, you know, she often listens to the show, and she never thought that she or her family would need to utilize some of the services that we've actually talked about, but she was able to pass me along to one of her relatives, great-granddaughter or something to that nature, who's dealing with a child welfare situation. But I just said that to say that I do think that this show is a value to this community and to that particular family. I'm going to wish them well in their engagement, interaction with the child welfare system. So we want to stay on the air. We want to keep bringing you vital information that is relative to this community, this population. As you all have often heard in our conversations, whether it's on this show or commercials, 68.2% of the children who are in Milwaukee's local foster care system are black children. 68.2%. To me, that says there is a crisis, an epidemic that is going on around black children being removed from zip codes like 53212, 53206, 53208, 53209, 53210, 53205, all at 53216, 53218. So even if it's not you, directly understand that when we have this rate of black children coming in the system at a rate of like 2.5 times that of white children, that we have a crisis here. And if it's not you, it could be your niece, it could be your sister, it could be your grandmama next week. You know, that's our reality. So, or his father. So we encourage you to continue to listen to this show and to call others about the show. We definitely want to hear from you over at Fresh Start Family Services. So let's talk about engaging fathers in child welfare services. CPS, there is a federal mandate for child protection services to engage fathers. A federal law, federal mandate. And people need to understand this is a federal obligation. But far too many fathers have been left out of child welfare and family court, family-centered practice. And far too many children have been adopted out due to our system's illegal practices. What we know is that research shows that children growing up without fathers are more likely to A, fail out of school or to drop out, B, engage in early sexual activity, C, develop drug and alcohol problems, D, experience or perpetrate violence. If we know that healthy father presence and involvement is paramount to children's development, why are so many fathers being marginalized and overlooked by the very child-serving systems that are supposed to be working in the children's best interest? Dr. Smith, I believe that fathers are the antidote to a lot of the current social ills that we are facing in our community. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I think it all starts, though. You think about like just when the divorce epidemic really started, and you talk about, single households and everything there. At that time, the courts had no regard for the father at all. So we've always been climbing this upward battle. And it's only when good fathers who, went to fight for to battle for their children, that it started to be known, start talking to their politicians, their elected officials, things of that nature. And while we have federally mandated things for child protective services to include the father, because so many oftentimes, and that was also a part of, the plan also from the system, when we had men and women inside of the homes, specifically with the African-American families, if a man was inside the home, they wouldn't receive different services. And so that time, just the woman became known as the primary caregiver. That's just basically how it was. So like I said, we just been fighting an uphill battle. And then when you start to have men who understood we were being railroaded by the system, it was like, for those who really wanted to fight for their children, it was just an uphill struggle from there. So even though we've gained many, many rights, just like as us as a people, we've gained many rights, it's still so far for us to go still.
So you're talking about public policy going back into the late 50s,
early
mid-60s,
definitely.
that talk about no man in the rule house.
Yeah,
And so many of the fathers during that era who left home didn't just abandon their family.
They were doing it actually to help the child, to help the family, because oftentimes you would see fathers that was in the home, and then they would try to have to act like they weren't in the home when the social workers came, things of that nature. And if they were caught in the home, then the services would be gone. So then they really start leaving. But, along that time, too, also you got to look at a lot of the other stuff that was going on within our country, within our nation, that made it a little bit easier. Yeah. And the biggest thing is always going to be interfering or tied with drugs, because we talk about some of the things that frustrate us as men. When we get emotionally frustrated, there's a couple of things that we do. Most of us, we're not going to cry. It comes out with anger, frustration. It comes out with self-medication. With self-medication, then you just had an epidemic of different drugs and whatnot. And once you get that, now you start talking about a person who's not maximizing this ability and not the person who they once were because of the substances inside of them. So
now, Brother Ed, I'm going to have you talking to the microphone. Brother Ed, your case was a turning point in terms of how the local child welfare system, I would say, began to relate to fathers in general, or to increase the value that they were placing on engaging fathers. Now, let me be the first to say there is a long road for us to go. We got a long ways to come, because for so many years, and I will quote something from an article, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, where the former director of the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare, Miss Denise Revels Robinson, she had indicated how this was a historical practice, basically, of the Bureau of the departments to exclude fathers. And to me, just by that admission alone says there was an illegal practice that was going on in local child welfare that is reflective of what happens on a national scale. So your case became, in 2004, it became a turning point. So can you talk a little bit about the history of your case without naming organizations or naming case managers, but just give us an idea. What happened?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, I really do thank child welfare system for making me the man I am today. Because if it wasn't for the fact that they pushed me to be more than what I expected myself to be. Okay?
How did that happen?
Basically, by the way they challenged me. Being a man, you got to understand, being a man, that's one thing most men do not like, for no one to challenge them when their authority comes. Especially when it comes down, perfect example, it comes down to something of yours, like your child. In the situation where I went through, I didn't get a chance to be a part of the child's birthing, or, getting a chance to get to know or to see the child. But then as things progressed, I got a chance to understand what my capabilities are, what my strength was, what my weaknesses was. Okay, like perfect example, the legal term, the GAL. A lot of parents, a lot of black men do not know what the guardian ad litem means. Okay, then when I was into the court situation, I had to deal with not only with the guardian ad litem, but the foster parents' lawyers, the state's lawyers, and the person who had birthed my, lawyer.
Okay.
So, I come in a room in a fight where everybody else had boxing gloves on.
Wow.
And I came in the room handcuffed. Was no win.
So you felt that you were at a disadvantage. Did you feel? I don't want to put words in. But did you feel that you were? Oh, okay.
Totally at a disadvantage.
Okay.
But the thing of it is that it wasn't a disadvantage. It was making me step more up to the plate. You
knew you had a fight on your hands.
Oh, I knew I had a fight when I first walked in the door. When I seen the seriousness of it from the person at the child welfare had wanted me to sign over my rights when I got to the hospital, making accusations. And I would say, well, I had to think about it.
So that was the child was just born, and the social worker came to the hospital and wanted you to give up your rights to the child.
Correct.
And place the child into foster care.
Correct.
Okay.
And was making promises towards me, like saying that I don't have to worry about child support if I just sign my rights over. It's more to it than just signing it over for child support. It's the fact that a piece of my heritage.
Right.
Again, when you think about it, like you said in the beginning, the father is the source of the home. Growing up in an environment without a father, a strong mother raised us in the church, and again, the things that was said was about, like, how can I put it? We strayed away from the word, and when we strayed, we used. And again, you commented on the drug situation. Things happen, and when they happen, it happened in the worst. But the thing of it is the things that did happen helped me to see what I need to do that day.
Gotcha. So I want to give the audience just a little background information. Your son was born, placed in foster care. You expressed from the beginning that you wanted to be involved in your child's life. Not just involved, you wanted to be the parent. You wanted your child to be with you, but you came up against some pushback. And yeah,
mildly.
Okay,
yeah.
And so during that time, I believe it was 2005 or something, in March, you had met all the court order conditions that were associated with your being able to get your child back. Do you remember what some of those court order conditions were?
Yes. One was a nurturing class. I didn't do one, I did 3.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was a parenting class.
Specialized parenting class.
Specialized parenting classes. Because I guess psychologically, like you was just saying, but psychologically, fathers are a disciplinary. That's the thing that, they was trying to beat in my head. The only thing I'm good at is either paying, supporting the family, or being a disciplinary.
So you're a checkbook or you're disciplinary.
Right.
Okay.
You're not a
person, a caregiver.
A caregiver. You have no understanding of what it means to raise a child.
But see, now the interesting thing here is that in child welfare, it is predominantly a female labor force. I mean, it's female psychology, and then being at that, it's a white female dominant, industry.
And I think even to take a step further than that, the professors who educate
before they get into the
field, even step foot into the child welfare system, are females as well.
Okay, so now when we look at this, and we're talking about folks' perception of black fathers, the thing that I think is very interesting is that we know that there are a lot of interracial relationships, folks who are, dating one another, folks outside of their race, black men dating white women. And the thing that I find to be very interesting is how case managers, young white case managers, females, can date black men, have babies by black men in their private lives, but then when they cross over into their professional realm, how it can present some challenges. Do you think, Dr. Smith, that somehow the work environment or the culture, whatever perceptions that child welfare, family courts may have of black men, that these young, good-hearted, and young white girls will adopt some of those ways? Do you think that happens?
I don't know. It's hard. You always have to judge things on a case-by-case situation. Mm-hmm. But I think Sean just hit the nail on the head with that as far as, like, how a person is raised or trained. But whenever we start looking at anything like systems, from stereotyping to racism, you got to look at it from a system and then from an individual. And I think sometimes, like, you could have a friend that's white. You'd be like, oh, no, this is a good white person. But then when they get around a group of white people, you'd be like, oh, they're a little different because it's a group structure that's going on. So to answer your question with the females, I think when they see themselves in a relationship, they see that as an isolated event, something that's different, like an exception. Like even they'll say to us sometimes, oh, you're not like, the rest, or like you're different somehow, or something stupid like that. But when they see it as a system as a whole, some of the stereotypes, and sometimes it's just like unconscious biases and stereotypes that people have they don't even know. But so when they see it as a whole, then they start to reflect that of a majority culture and a majority thought process, where on an individual basis they can have a different level of thinking, a more conscious level of thinking even.
Let me go back to your court order conditions. Now, from what I read in the Journal Summary, you can correct me, either detract from me, subtract from it, or add to it, but you had to complete 2 parenting classes.
Yes.
You had to undergo multiple psychological evaluations.
Oh, yes.
How many did you have to go?
I went through 4.
You went to 4 psychological evaluations. Why did you go through so many psychological evaluations?
Because the case manager said I was crazy to think that I was going to be able to get my son back. There's got to be something wrong with me.
And what did the 4 psychological evaluations show?
It shows
by 4 different people.
By 4 different people. It shows that, first of all, that I was willing to do whatever it took. Again, I was listening to what y'all was just saying, and again, it's like they think that it's hereditary for people to be ignorant. It's in our genes or in our nature to act out on what you see out on the street corners.
Or on the media, on the news.
On the media.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
When you did your evaluations, over what amount of time did they do that? Because, like, usually if you do an evaluation, you shouldn't do one for another year and whatnot. So did they try to do them all at one time?
No.
Or did they? Okay, so.
Because your case went on for how many years?
2 years.
For 2 years. So within the course of 2 years, you had 4
Every
psychological
6 months.
evaluations. Is that systemic bias? See, that's what I'm talking about, racism, discrimination. I mean, 4 psychologicals?
Because usually when you do an evaluation, what you're going to do, they might do an IQ test. They might do something like that. But generally what they're doing is they're looking at like a review of records in combination with an interview. And then as far as like collaboration of records, so they'll look at, your history as far as like your school records, your criminal record. Mm-hmm. When they do interviews, they'll interview people who knew you, things of that nature, to get a composite of your character. But if they're doing 4 in 2 years, basically what they're saying is the first time we said, oh, ain't nothing wrong with it. We got to find something else to show that something is.
We need to find a deep deficit.
If you get what you want the first time, then you don't have to look for it anymore.
Correct. Oh, that's deep. So we're going to take a brief breakfast. We're going to take it. What has the word break in it? We're going to take a brief break and then come right back on Fresh Start Today. Good afternoon. This is Jermaine reporting from Fresh Start's WBCM studio with breaking news. Black children are flooding the local foster care system. Infant boys and girls coming straight out the womb, which means you probably have a black child in foster care, you are a black child in foster care, you're related to a black child in foster care, or you may even be a case manager or service provider for a black child in foster care. If so, then you don't want to miss the Color of Child Welfare Conference on May 17th. Fresh Start Family Services will host the only conference in the state that convenes to strictly focus on the needs of black children in foster care. This year's theme is Against All Odds, from foster care to success. There will be national and local presenters like judges, authors, educators, politicians, and journalists who were formerly in foster care, and many others. Some of the workshop titles include Black Children's Journey in Foster Care, From Total Exclusion to Over-Inclusion, Psychotropic Drug Dependency in Black Children, Black Single Mothers and the Child Welfare System. There's so much to talk about. To join the conversation, register today for the Color Child Welfare Conference and Recruitment Fair on May 17th. Call 414-351-1100. That's 351-1100. Limited seats available. This is Jermaine signing off from Fresh Start WBCM, Wisconsin. Black Children Matter. Back to you. You are tuned in to Fresh Start today. This is Jermaine, Sean Roby, Dr. Ramel Smith, and our special guest today is Brother Ed, and we're talking about the unique relationship that black fathers have with child-serving systems like the child welfare and family court systems. And we were talking about some of the court order conditions that you were expected to participate in and complete in order to have your child come into your care, because it wasn't reunification.
No.
So that you can get your child, and at that particular time, your children were placed with a middle-class Caucasian couple in Belgium, Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your child at that time was between the ages of birth and 2. So it was a 2-year process that you have been fighting from day one, from the time your child was born, to get your child. And so the last thing we were talking about was some of the court order conditions, and you had mentioned you had been through 2 parenting classes, 4 psychological evaluations, individual therapy, family therapy, anger management, and a nurturing class. You remember that?
Yeah.
There was a lot of hours there. And so
plus get a job.
And get a job.
And get a job.
Okay. Now let's go back to these 4 psychological evaluations that were done within a
2-year period.
2-year period of time. Why do you think that you were being required to undergo so many psychological evaluations? And let me just say that the Caucasian family who had your sons, they also had to submit to a psychological as well.
Yes.
And it's okay. So why do you think that they kept coming back saying that you have to go through 4 psychological evaluations?
Well, to my own opinion is that they was trying to break me. They was trying to make me get back into the way where I would say, okay, you know what, I give up. I just can't do it no more. It's too much pressure on me. But the thing of it is that to me today, and even back then, how can I turn my back on me? That's the way I see it as I seen my son.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think of it
That's right.
like I had to fight from the time he opened his eyes, the very time he first opened his eyes, till now where he can see. And I got to help guide him and focus him on seeing what is right and what is wrong. And again, like I said, if it hadn't been for the child welfare system, I probably would have been lax on a lot of things. But as it turned out, today I'm not going to give in or submit to something that is unethical for my child to be. It's like, perfect example, you want him to see a father and a mother in the home. You don't see, he can't. You can never say that his father is outside the house or his father is doing things that he shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me just get clarification around something. The Bureau's position at that time was that the child should be with you. It was just that a case manager. Now, is that true or not? Because that's what I read in Milwaukee Journal.
Okay,
but you hear,
again. You get misinformed information from misinformed people.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the lady who was the case manager at the time, she was giving everybody misinformed information about me because she went off of someone else who had nothing to do with this. This is all about me and my seed. Mm-hmm. Now, when it came to it about me doing the right things, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. I'm going, and this is the way I was seeing it as I was going, like you read about all the stuff that I was doing. I was taking it step by step instead of trying to do everything at once. And I was grateful that it came the way it did, because then this way I can take care of one thing at a time. Psychological, nurturing, therapy,
parenting classes,
and get a job. Okay. Like I said, I had to emphasize on that because I still had to pay child support. And
if you didn't comply,
if I was 5 minutes late now I had to drive to Belgium to pick up my child, and if I was 5 minutes late because of traffic,
they will cancel the visit.
Cancel the visit for the whole month.
Wow.
Now, that's not the first time I've actually heard that. I've heard that recently, about a year ago, with the supervised visitation company, where you remember when we had, I can't think of, Beverly Moore was on the program. and we had kind of talked about, you know, those stipulations and restrictions that they place around visits, and parents have to be on time. If they're not on time, folks will cancel those visits immediately, and then somebody's going to report out on that. So let me ask you this. Do you think that what we call the ongoing case manager had too much power or influence with the courts and also with their employer, which was the bureau at that time, now the division mortgage operator?
Yeah, I think so, because, you know, the expression is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Correct.
And I'll get. So let's talk about this pressure. Let's talk about, because you're talking about there was a lot of pressure. And I hate for you to relive this experience, but I appreciate you sharing your story with so many fathers who may be listening to this program right now, and fathers who may be in the same situation with you, whether they're dealing with family court system or they're dealing with child welfare. This pressure, you had said something so powerful, I thought it was an epiphany. You said pressure can burst pipes or something, too much pressure or something. So let's talk about pressure. Let's talk about how pressure looks. It manifests itself. During that time, what pressure did you feel? Were you in touch with your feelings, you know, when you walked into the court, the visits, your interactions with the case? What did it look like?
Let's start out like this.
All right.
First of all, it was the pressure of facing me, the past, the stuff that happened in my past. The stuff that happened in my past is my past. I can't change that. I made mistakes. I'm not going to sit up here and try to say that I'm this perfect father I'm Ward Cleaver. No. I'm far from it. I'm not Eddie Haskell father either, though.
What about Cliff? What about Cliff Huxley?
Well, no, I didn't crack too many jokes. Okay. But back to the thing about the pressure. You know, okay, now to face yourself. You know, especially when you made mistakes, and then sometimes you have to look back at them. You know, no one can beat you up no better, no worse than what you can do to yourself.
That's right.
I don't care whatever they can do. They can put scars on your outside, but sooner or later that'll heal. But the scars that's on the inside, they're going to stay with you for the rest of your life. Okay, so, you know, I scarred myself up. I made mistakes. Okay, I had to live with that. Secondly, you know, to be able to say that, you know, for have someone to tell me that I'm incapable or I can't comprehend the ramification of how hard where I'm at, how hard this is for a father to face these things. Okay. They didn't want me to be a man. They wanted me to be their boy.
Say that again.
They didn't want me to be a man. They wanted me to be their boy.
That's powerful. Why do you think that?
Well,
is that, Dr. Smith? Let me ask Dr. Smith right there. Do you think that has to do with how America historically has portrayed or perceived black men?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely it. You think about it, when they came over, for them to think that they could steal us showed they had no respect for us in the beginning. And so then you go there, then we were reduced to animals, to livestock, to chattel.
Yeah.
And then when it was beneficial for the South for us to be able to vote, but they didn't want us to have too much power, they deemed us 3/5 of a man.
3/5
so we've
of a
been
man.
going, you know, through this. And one of the more poignant signs you see during the civil rights movement was the sign, what? I am a man. Yeah. What did they call us to degrade us? It wasn't the N-word. It was boy. It was when a 6-year-old boy would talk to an 80-year-old black man and say, hey, boy, you get on the other side. So you talk about the feminization, the trying to reduce you from a manhood. That's always been something that's an issue we've had to deal with since our bringing to this country.
Now, we only have a few more minutes on this talk show. If you would like to join this conversation, you can call 414-444-5250. We're talking about the unique relationship that black men have with the child welfare system and the family court system. And let me also say, in regards to young white social workers or young white women who are working with black fathers, not all of them have difficult experiences with black fathers or have negative perceptions of black fathers in their professional capacity. But clearly there are some who have some challenges in that area. Now, this pressure, because I was reading a study, Dr. Smith, and that study was talking about how racism can impact the mental health status of folks, but also the aging process. And we already know that black men have the shortest life expectancy by 6 to 7 years compared to other men who are walking around. So can we talk about the impact that racism, discrimination, this pressure can have on black men?
Yeah, so when you think about it, we're talking about trauma. So when you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, the first thing people think about is Vietnam era, some type of soldier who's going through something. So in order for something to be traumatizing, something traumatic has to happen to you. And so for that trauma to happen to you, not only does it have to happen, but then it has to be for it to become like a negative effect on your life. You have to have what we call like these constant reminders of it. And then not only do you have the constant reminders, but then you have like these troubling kind of alarms that you try to avoid anything that was similar to it. So when Brother Ed talked about like, hey, you know what? I think they're trying to make me be stressed. They're trying to make me do this. So I don't want to have to go, because he was reliving all of those different things. So you talk about the trauma from a black boy, everything that we've seen. You just take a boy who's grown up now, where he's like, well, you know what? They kill our brothers because they were like this or like this. And then when Trayvon Martin was killed, he was like, man, what did he do? And then when you see Henry Louis Gates, a Harvard professor, get stopped at his door and you can't get in, you just say, well, what break do we have? And so when you get all of these different types of hits from the media and the propaganda, where you see our lives don't matter, where we have to have a slogan that Black Lives Matter. But then you talk about, you said the word microaggression. Every day we deal with microaggressions. Those are the little things that we always know about.
Right.
This, the black sheep of the family. Oh, he got a black eye or whatnot like that. All those little things that make you classify. In America, we always had to look at this. This is a democracy. We're talking about voting, go out, vote April 5th, all of those things. Well, who wins? The majority. So what do they always want us to call ourselves? The minority. Because it's reminding you that you are the loser. So when you start hearing all of these type of terms day after day after day, you cannot go on and it not affect you. We can say that it doesn't. I don't care how well educated we think we are, how many different ways we've elevated in certain society, things of that nature. Malcolm X said it the best way, and this was back in 1960. He said, what do you call a black man with a PhD? He said Nigger. And that's the same way that we always feel, no matter where we at. Look at how they do our president at this day and time. So if they will disrespect this man in the highest of office, what does any other person? We said, man, what chance do I have? We just look at pop culture just recently. You got a mailman doing his job, and then you got undercover police who want to arrest him and take him off his job. Why? Because he said something to them that they didn't like after they were in the wrong originally. So when you start talking about all of these things, now you take this from a young child and you think about all of these things that do it from a neurochemical from a neurotransmitter standpoint, even from the socialization that we're taught. When you're taught as a young black boy, what are we taught? The rules by our parents. When you see the police, don't do this or don't do this. You're taught fear. You're taught, we teach ourselves almost to be second-class citizens, to understand that this is just the way it is. We have to be careful. And so that's why sometimes we rebel in the way we do, because we say, well, I'm sick of this. But the only thing is, then we face the harsher consequences, which end up when you start talking about in prison incarceration, you talk about deaths and whatnot. And one thing, man, Tookie Williams has said this, and it was so powerful. We talk about Tookie Williams being the founder of the Crips. He was unfortunately executed by the state of California. But one of the things he talked about, he said the media has it so bad that when another black man sees another black man, he believed it and believes it's in his own nature, it's in his own good to annihilate what he sees before him, even though it looks like him, because he's been taught that this is bad, this is the enemy. So you say, does it cause trauma? Yes, racism causes trauma. And all of us.
And discrimination, are you looking at racism and discrimination as being the same thing?
Well, I think discrimination is a product of the racism.
Okay. Now, going back to Ed and his story. Ed, I remember when we did a pre-interview, you had said two things that I thought were profound I want you to elaborate on. One is about children being casualties in this whole process. That's one thing. But then also, too, you talked about still after, 10 years, 12 years now, your son being in your home. How many years has it been? 10?
They've been 10.
10 years that you still have nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
You have the son. So that's to me.
When you just talk about that traumatic experience.
The things that you have to have like these reoccurring dreams, and they often wake you up in night terrors and things of that nature. But sometimes it could just be like driving past a courthouse where you see it and it makes you nervous, or seeing something like on the road when you were going to Belgium, to Wisconsin, like just being on the road on a certain way where you get that eerie feeling.
Well, we have Dennis on the line. Dennis, you have a brief question or comment?
Yeah, I just got a comment, man. First of all, just thank you for raising the issue with this subject here, Dr. Ramel. You're one of my favorites, man. You did Tremaine, you did with this subject. I'm dealing with men every day, and when we talk about the trauma, and to the brother, man, thank you for sharing your story, man, because this is critical. we don't realize how much trauma men are dealing with from being separated from their children and being separated from their families. And we're fighting up against this system to where every day I have men who are calling my office who are going through the very same things that this brother is going through, and the atrocities of how you're being treated and the racism that exists where they're not even acknowledging men as being human beings, you know, that have the proper ability to take care of their children. You know, you have mothers who are being put into the system and they're not even considering the fathers, man. And this is one of the most detrimental issues that we facing in our community is men being separated from their children and us not understanding the trauma specifically that men are going through and what that leads, you know, what that's causing as far as destruction in our community, man. So, you know, we got a real serious fight on our hands when it comes to, as black men, stepping up and being, you know, enforcing the system, you know, to give us the respect that we need as fathers.
How do we do that? Dennis, because you work with the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, and thank you for your great work over there. But
you say, how do we do it, man? We need to get more men who are experiencing this. We need to mobilize and organize amongst those individuals. You know, and first we have to get them to understand that they need treatment when it comes to the trauma. But we need to, our strength is in our numbers. It's one thing when you hear one man talking about it, but when you hear 50 men talking about it, 100 men talking about it, 200 men talking about it, we need to organize and put pressure on this system. We need to put forth some class action lawsuits. You know, and we need to expose these stories, you know, bring exposure and awareness to these stories that men are going through and the suffering that they're going through, because this is, again, one of the most detrimental things that we're having. When you don't have stable fathers in the home, you have unstable communities. You have unstable communities. And that's what you see right now. Our communities are unstable because men are just being totally destroyed when it comes to, you know, the respect that they have, that they're not given when it comes to being a parent, and then their connection to their children. We're not even acknowledging that, you know, and it's modern day slavery. They are taking our children away from us, not allowing us to be the fathers that we want to be. And it's just like in slavery when the slave master will come in your house and take your baby, and then you got to sit there helpless. We're going through that right now in 2016 as fathers. So, you know, again, men need to organize, mobilize, come together and realize that we have a common bond when it comes to our children and our families, and we need to mobilize around that.
All right. So it's just for clarification purposes, it's not just the child welfare system, but let's talk about the court system, the family court system.
Right.
You know, and that's whether your child is in foster care, not in foster care, if a man and woman are going through divorce, you know, just how the systems, plural, respond to black fathers is atrocious. It's terrible.
It's not equal, you know. And first of all, if you're going to be, you know, put in a position where you got to pay child support and where you got to go through all of these family court procedures, and then you're not even given an equal consideration when it comes to making decisions on your child. If your child is put into the foster care system because the mother did something wrong, they don't even acknowledge you as being a credible parent to be there for your children. They either try to send your children off into the system or, you know, send them to everybody but the father. You know, and why is this? Like this man said, they got him going through all these psychological evaluations, you know, to prove that he's a credible father, you know, but other people are not experiencing that. You know what I'm saying? So this is a real serious injustice that we got to keep bringing exposure to. And like I said, the best thing that we could do is organize. We need to bring more fathers out who have these stories, and we need to look at how do we file a class action lawsuit? How do we put pressure on legislation to change these things? Because a lot of times we be in our emotions about it and we be reactionary about it, but we have to organize and put pressure on the legislative bodies to change this. And when they see us in numbers, then we'll be able to make a difference.
Well, Dennis, I want you to look at your schedule for next Wednesday, see if we can continue this dialogue. And you give me a call offline, all right?
He's right on point.
Yes, sir.
You're on point. Much. You know, I often tell folks that the system is not broken. It's design.
Purpose dense.
You know, and we need to get out of that mindset, because you can't keep having this type of data that comes decade after decade after decade and saying, oh, this is just a mistake, or it's a fluke, or it's a deficit, or it's a mistake, you know. Because at some point, if you're talking about performance-based contracting or performance-based outcomes, you know, the challenge is if you're getting negative numbers, that we need to really go back and reprogram the system so we can get the outcomes that we want. So I think after, we're beyond that point of using that as an excuse that the system is broken and as if it's outside of some folks' control.
Right.
The system can be, it's just designed. It's just designed.
I think really quick to add on to what Brother Dennis was talking about, when you talk about everybody rallying together and there's power in numbers, and before you get to that point, men have to be able to communicate with each other. We got to be able to talk to each other.
Because we deal with it in isolation.
Exactly.
In our silos. And
society makes us
Who
feel
helped
a certain
you?
way.
Brother Ed, when you were going through this, what did your support system look like? Because I think that's critical for anybody dealing with child welfare.
Absolutely.
What did your system look like?
Okay. First it was a fellowship,
Okay.
Then after that, then there was my support group. I have my own support group.
Mm-hmm.
I have some brothers who look out for me and love me and, push me even more harder than I push myself. Then after that, I went to somebody I had met somebody who worked at the NAACP. And I didn't even know that somebody was following me as much. But I got a chance to meet people who knew people.
There you go.
People.
There you go.
There you go. And that's the power of communication and knowledge.
And and that's the thing. Sometimes you have to put the legwork in. Okay. And I really did like what that caller said. It's a cry out, man, for us to come together as men. Again, because why be a second class citizen? We was just talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to comment one more thing about the casualty.
Yes, sir.
That's the one more thing I wanted to comment
Enlighten
about.
me.
Out of all the things that I've been through, the person that hurt the worst was the child.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the fact that he's torn from between going from place to place, and then when he get attached to something, it's just like you taking a teddy bear or something from a child. You taking something away from him that is more tangible. Or, to be able to see that he relates closer to me because I have the same color skin or the same color eyes, than to go all the way out to Belgium and find out that why their eyes are blue and mine are brown.
Mm-hmm.
Why is my skin color the way it is? Again, it's not the like he said, the system is not broke. It was made to be that way. It was made to bring a particular race of people down. How do you stop something from being strong? You cut it off at the source.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's interesting. When I was looking at the summary of the testimony or the position that the various attorneys had on your case, it was noted that, let me see, one of the therapists testified that she has met with you weekly since October 25 and had observed you laughing, smiling, and reading books with your son. One case manager, Lisa Thiel, said continually found nitpicking reasons why Mr. or Brother Ed visits with his son should not be increased. I made the comment that Ed is never going to be good enough for the other case manager, because you end up having two case managers because they end up removing one of the case managers off the case. She was Caucasian. Mm-hmm. And then there was an African-American case manager, both females, who was assigned to the case and had a different position than what the previous case manager had, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we have a caller. Ronnie, you're on Fresh Start today. You have a brief question or comment as it relates to this conversation?
Yes, I do. My brother had pointed out to me that he thought that the attack was actually on the black family, using the black man.
Oh, yeah.
But that the overall attack was on the black family because there actually are some females who get mistreated, but then they don't come to the forefront either because it's like, okay, if you're having problems and you're a female, then something must be truly wrong with you. So I think we need to all bind together against an unjust system. And my final comment is in regard to the judges. If when you all start working on this, if you can have a log of the judges that make rulings that are just ridiculous, we could people could give their comments as to how they were treated by a particular judge, because they kind of are hiding in plain sight, where some judges, I'm sure some of them are making rulings that are equitable, but some are just arbitrarily just coming up with something.
And I appreciate that response, Ronnie. And I think you're right on point. I think what happens in family court system is a mess, and it's tragic. And like you said, children are the casualties in all of this.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the attorneys, it was your attorney actually, Ed. Your attorney had said basically had brought out some things about the other parent, basically talking about his criminal record, criminal background, and had filed for bankruptcy, and but yet in their mind, he was still better fit for your son, and they were saying, okay, that if this family were able to adopt the kid, that you should be able to have visits with your child.
Well, actually, they didn't want to even give me visits.
Oh, then that was misprinted there.
That was misprinted. They
Wow.
wanted to eliminate that.
They wanted to eliminate you from your son's
from
life.
the whole equation. They wanted to.
Wow.
They did everything they could to discredit me. Okay, but that was then.
Okay.
I mean, like I said again, some of the stuff is painful, but the thing of it is that, the pain makes us stronger for what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in order for you to be able to walk a mile, you got to walk a foot.
Let me write that down.
Write that down, too. And while you're writing that down, I think we definitely want to commend you, Brother Ed, on your resiliency and all of the men out there who constantly deal with these day-to-day stressors, whether it's with the judicial system or with child welfare, because it takes a lot, and that's a lot to bear every single day. You're talking about court conditions, have to identify a job, parenting classes, nurturing classes, on top of living your regular day-to-day routine life, and that's a lot on any one person.
I want to kind of have Dr. Smith close with this. It's been great, and hopefully, Brother Ed, you will come back, because I think your story is so profound. There's so many different layers to it that can help fathers and families who are dealing with this. You have an open door invitation. Dr. Smith, the blacksmith. Now, when we talk about the impact that racism and discrimination and bias has on black men's mental health, on individuals, but we're talking about black men today, black fathers, is it true that our emotional, chronological, and physiological ages can be different?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, this all goes back to what we talked about, the age studies and whatnot like that. The harder your upbringing is, the more trauma you're going to have, later in life. Because what it does, it usually allows us to make worse choices. And those worse choices then have an effect on our life expectancy. So when we start looking at our young brothers who's dying, even before they can hit, the age legally to drink, you think about that factors into the life expectancy. But it's not only just your age, but it's the quality of life that I think is even more important than that. Because you can live to be 85, but if you're 85 but you felt like you've been treated like a boy, a second-class citizen, or everything has been against you, it's still troublesome. So you say, what can we do? I think the biggest thing is what Brother Ed has done, and that's to have the strength, because so many of us live in denial. We try to act as men. Oh, it don't matter to me. Forget it then. I know guys say, they took this one, I just have another baby and I'll be a father to this one, and they still got that pain from the other one, but it's like a substitute.
Is that also too like how some women, our sisters who come to child welfare, and they have these what we call replacement or substitute babies, and you say, why she keep having babies?
Yeah. And that's like what the caller, Sister Ronnie, said. It's not just an attack against the black man. It's the black family and the black family. And Brother Dennis alluded to it too. He said having an unstable father creates an unstable community.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about it, we all have to band together and go there. So we can't be, again, going by the okie doke as far as like being divisive, going against one another. But like I said, with him just saying, hey, I was hurt by this. I didn't know exactly what to do. I need help, because as men, that's one of the things. I could do this by myself, or we try to front it off like it ain't, and then either, like I said, we lash out through emotional aggression or through self-medication. But for him to say, what, I need help, but to understand that getting help, it wasn't a sign of weakness. What he was doing was building, social capital. I know people who know people who know people who can help me and put me in the right direction. That goes back to what Dennis said. Once you have those numbers, now you know what? Not only do you have help, but you have other coping factors. He said something that I don't know if anybody heard. He said, I got some brothers who love me. And that's not easy for a lot of dudes to say,
Wow.
to be able to say, I got a band of brothers who got my back, that we love each other. Ain't nothing homosexual,
right,
gay about
right,
it. It's like,
right.
these is my guys right here.
That's
and I
right,
know I can
that's
depend
right.
on. And when we talk about binding together, that does so much, because now you got a group. Now you're doing productive things. And the little things that we take away from that can keep us healthy, sleeping right, eating right,
That's right.
exercise, those little bitty things that we don't think. Now you got a group of people who you're doing positive things with and whatnot like that. So once you start doing those things, he talked about the fellowship. We got to learn how to pray together, meditate together, come together, and those
deal
same
with
circles.
this stress.
But then
Yes.
the biggest thing is, and Brother Dennis hit this, like, just knocked it out the park. We come together. I say it all the time. My maternal grandmother told me the best way to heal yourself is to help others. So once we all come together from our mistakes, from our hurts, we help somebody else. That makes us feel better. When I see I didn't help the young brother not have to go through all of the pain that I went through, that I can help give him some couple of steps. So as we band together, as we bond together, those are the things that increases not only our life expectancy, because we have we have more to live for. We're doing things to make us live better, but our quality of life improves immensely.
We're going to work together so we can stop this assault on the black family. And,
to.
with that being said, the Color Child Welfare Conference, which is being hosted by Fresh Start Family Services on May the 17th, is coming up. If you know anybody who's involved in the foster care system, they are a clients, case heads, as we call them, I want you to give them a call, because I want to make sure that they can get into the conference for free. It's very important that they are at the table, that we hear their voice, that we engage them in a way outside of the courtroom. We're part of the community. We're family. So I want you to have them call 414-351-1100. Extension 150, 414-351-1100, extension 150. Now, if you're a professional working in foster care system, or you're someone parenting a black child in foster care system, you should be at the Color Child Welfare Conference too. Go to your employer, ask your employer to pay for it. If not, we will work something out just to make sure that you're part of this conference on May 17th. The Color, a Child Welfare Conference, against all odds, from foster care to success. It's been great here on Fresh Start today, talking about the unique relationship that black fathers have with the child welfare and the family court system. We will continue this dialogue hopefully on next Wednesday. You be well, be safe until we talk again.